Imagine a world without ads. No commercials, no pop-ups, no billboards, trying to sell you something. It sounds peaceful, right? But what if I told you that advertising wasn't just invented to sell you soap or snacks? What if I told you it was a key weapon in fighting a war and building a nation from scratch? This is the story of how advertising sold a revolution. For the flashy commercials we see today, advertising was simple. It was mostly text, printed in newspapers or on posters called broadsides. They announced things like runaway apprentices, ships arriving in port, or goods for sale at the local store. It was practical, straightforward, and a little bit dull. A feeling of discontent was growing against British rule. People were unhappy with the taxes and the laws being imposed from across the ocean. They needed a way to share their ideas, to unite, and to turn that unhappiness into action. This is where advertising got a brand new job. Instead of just selling goods, it started selling an idea, the idea of liberty. Patriots like Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and Paul Revere were not just revolutionaries. They were master marketers. They understood that to start a revolution, you first had to win the hearts and minds of the people. They used the tools they had, newspapers, pamphlets, and those simple broadsides, to launch one of the most successful marketing campaigns in history. The British Parliament passed the Stamp Act in 1765. It was a direct tax on all paper goods in the colonies, from legal documents to playing cards in newspapers. For the colonists, this was an outrage. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle of no taxation without representation. The Patriots saw their chance. The very newspapers that were being taxed became the primary weapons against the tax itself. Printers began using powerful imagery in their advertisements and articles. One of the most famous was the skull and crossbones, often printed where the official stamp was supposed to go. This was a brilliant piece of visual advertising. It sent a clear, shocking message. The Stamp Act is death to liberty. It was simple, easy to understand, and incredibly effective at stirring up anger and defiance. Newspapers like the Pennsylvania Journal even published a tombstone edition, thick black borders mourning the death of a free press. This wasn't just news. It was a performance, a piece of protest art designed to evoke emotion. The campaign worked. The number of people protesting grew and grew. Boycotts were organized, stamp collectors were intimidated, and business ground to a halt. Faced with this united opposition, which was fueled by a relentless ad campaign, the British government had little choice. They repealed the Stamp Act just a year later. It was a huge victory for the colonists and a powerful demonstration of how media and messaging could shape public opinion and political outcomes. The Patriots learned a valuable lesson. A good slogan and a powerful image can be more persuasive than any logical argument. The marketing of revolution only got more sophisticated. The Patriots needed a way to keep people engaged and united against the British. They did this by creating a consistent brand identity for their cause. Symbols became incredibly important. The Liberty Tree, an elm tree in Boston where protesters first gathered against the Stamp Act, became a powerful and easily recognizable logo for the movement. Images of the Liberty Tree were printed everywhere, on pamphlets, flags, and even household items. It was like the Nike swoosh or the Apple logo of its day. When you saw it, you instantly knew what it stood for. Another powerful branding tool was the slogan. No taxation without representation was catchy, memorable, and perfectly encapsulated the colonists' main grievance. It was easy to chant at protests, easy to print on banners, and easy for everyone, from a Boston scholar to a rural farmer, to understand and repeat. The simple phrase unified a diverse population under a single, powerful idea. The Patriots also understood the power of a good story. They didn't just report events, they framed them to fit their narrative. The Boston Massacre in 1770 is a perfect example. Confrontation between colonists and British soldiers left 5 civilians dead. In reality, it was a chaotic and confusing event. But that's not the story the Patriots told. Paul Revere, who was a silversmith and engraver, created an engraving of the event that became the most famous image of the revolution. His print wasn't a factual news report. It was a piece of propaganda, a carefully crafted advertisement for the Patriot cause. It showed organized British soldiers firing on a peaceful, unarmed crowd of colonists. It even added a small dog to the scene to increase the sense of innocent life being threatened. This image was mass-produced and circulated throughout the colonies. It portrayed the British as cruel tyrants and the colonists as innocent victims, simplifying a complex event into a clear story of good versus evil. The name itself, the Boston Massacre, was a marketing masterpiece. Calling it a massacre framed the event as a deliberate slaughter, stirring up maximum outrage and sympathy for the colonists. The Patriots also excelled at controlling the narrative through boycotts. They promoted the idea of shunning British goods, especially tea. This was advertised as a patriotic duty. Ads and articles praised colonists who drank Liberty tea, made from local herbs, and shamed those who continued to buy from Britain. They turned a consumer choice into a political statement. Deciding what to drink in the morning became an act of rebellion. This campaign of non-importation was incredibly successful. It not only hurt the British economy, but also created a tangible way for every single colonist, man or woman, to participate in the protest. The number of people involved in the cause skyrocketed because the barrier to entry was as simple as choosing a different product at the market. Then came the Boston Tea Party. This wasn't a spontaneous riot. It was a carefully planned and executed piece of political theater. The event was advertised in advance through coded messages in newspapers and broadsides calling the Sons of Liberty to action. The act of dumping the tea into the harbor was a dramatic visual stunt designed for maximum media impact. It was the ultimate protest ad, sending an unmistakable message to London: "We will not be controlled." The story of the Tea Party spread like wildfire thanks to the Patriot Media Network, inspiring similar acts of defiance in other colonies. When the Revolutionary War finally began, advertising's role shifted from protest to mobilization. Now the goal was to recruit soldiers, raise funds, and maintain morale for a long and difficult fight. Recruitment posters became common. They used persuasive language and powerful appeals to patriotism, honor, and duty. They promised land, a steady wage, and the chance to fight for liberty. One famous poster declared, "Brave, healthy, able-bodied, and well-disposed young men who have any inclination to join the troops, now raising under General Washington, shall be kindly and generously received." This was a job ad, but for a cause. It sold the idea of being a soldier not just as employment, but as a heroic calling. Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, published in 1776, was perhaps the single most influential piece of advertising in the entire Revolution. It wasn't a newspaper ad, but its impact was massive. Paine used simple, direct, and powerful language that anyone could understand. He avoided complex legal arguments and spoke directly to the people's emotions and common sense. He argued that it was absurd for a tiny island to rule a vast continent. He called King George III a royal brute and made a passionate, persuasive case for complete independence. Common Sense sold an incredible number of copies. It's estimated to be around 500,000 in a country of just 2.5 million people. It was read aloud in taverns, homes, and public squares, spreading its message far and wide. It convinced countless wavering colonists that independence was not just an option, but a necessity. It effectively closed the sale on the idea of revolution, creating the public consensus needed to declare independence. Throughout the war, the Continental Congress and individual states continued to use advertising techniques to manage the war effort. They issued broadsides to announce victories, sometimes exaggerating them to boost morale. They ran ads asking for supplies, from blankets to food, appealing to the citizens' sense of patriotic duty to support the army. The number of these appeals shows how crucial public support was. Even the Declaration of Independence can be seen as a piece of marketing. It was a press release to the world, a document designed to justify the revolution and win international support. It lists grievances in a clear, compelling way, much like an ad lists the reasons why you should buy a product. It frames the American cause in the universal language of human rights, making it relatable to a global audience. So, the next time you see an advertisement, remember its incredible history. Remember that the same techniques used to sell you a new phone were once used to build a new country. The American Revolution wasn't just won on the battlefield. It was won in the pages of newspapers, on printed posters, and in the minds of ordinary people who were persuaded by a powerful and relentless campaign to buy into the most important idea of all, freedom. Thank you for watching. To dive deeper into the hidden stories of our past, make sure to subscribe to Historical Repos.